gonna on Wendy? On the window.
Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys at his home in Bel Air, California.
I was saying we could do
Interviewed January 11th, 1968. I wanted to, let me start this way because it's sort of an offbeat thing. We talked an awful lot about, you know, kind of new religious concepts in London and in Paris, and I started doing a little bit of it in the States, but found that, I guess I found that there's something about the American viewpoint, or something about us as Americans, that really doesn't seem to work with what so many Europeans are into, you know, European young people are into. And the Beatles is sort of, the Beach Boys is the first group that seems to be very much concerned and interested and sincerely involved in this thing. And though it's a very personal thing, you know, and I want to respect that as a personal thing, I still feel that part and parcel of what's happening in this music and in the youth scene today is based on a kind of new religious form that's growing up, you know?
Yeah, I think that, for the first time maybe in, God, I don't know how many millions of years, or thousands or hundreds, everybody's got a personal path right to God.
Yeah.
You know? And it seems to be working out so great with everybody individually, you know? Everybody's just going right to the source and just having a ball.
Right, and there's no hang-up.
No hang-ups.
I mean, like, you know, like this is Friday, we don't do this, this is Thursday.
Direct.
Right, yeah. And it's everybody, sort of every man for himself in the thing.
Yeah, right. And of course, Maharishi Mahesh, Yogi has provided a lot of people with power frequencies, you know, mantras. And, well, I guess this is it. This is the substance of meditation, repeating these mantras. And he is providing so many people with these power frequencies. And they're just instant, you know?
The question has come up with certain American groups. No, I'm not talking about adult groups. You know what I mean, older generation groups, but kids themselves who unfortunately ask me questions that I really don't like answering, you know, and if I ask them, I don't know why I'm asking since I don't like answering them, because I don't know, but the question inevitably comes up that there have been a lot of changes, like in all the groups, but the change in the Beach Boys is probably one of the most striking because it's always been successful. It isn't as if like you had to get into another bag because of the fact that one wasn't working. It was working, you know. And I think I understand to some extent through talking to Mike and Bruce why certain of these things have taken place and what perhaps I understand what your attitude is on the subject, you know, as far as doing what comes next, you know, for whatever reason. But there's, you know, like from a very typical West Coast surfing sound, you know, or even from that first single that you pressed yourself or taped yourself, to what you're doing now. Of course, it's pretty spectacular, and certain of the changes have had a kind of definite rhythmical balance with what's happening to a whole generation. To what extent do you feel like you're a part of that generation? Well,
to the extent that I felt that I was sort of tuned in musically to everything, and I kind of just represented a synthesis, you know, a certain kind, you know, of certain rock and roll techniques, you know, in recording, and just certain, it just represents a synthesis of just harmonics and balls, you know, and putting the two together, it was really out of sight.
Right.
You know, it was just different influences for freshmen, Phil Spector, a couple basic things like that.
But there was also,
and then you just sort of fall into it like that.
There was also a very personal thing that happened in your life, which I don't even think we, you know, should go into because I think it's corny at this point. But there was a little bit of help from your friends. That, to what extent, like, did your personal experiences outside of the field of music, you know, like the feeling was that Brian Wilson had really gone through some changes. That he had really sort of found, you know, a new opening. A lot of us did for the same reason, through the same, you know, causes. did this opening of kind of an awareness of everything around you precede this religious thing that's happening, or did it follow it? In other words, I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that, I don't know, I think it sort of preceded it, maybe. Everything just started to happen for me, personally, about 2 or 3 years ago. You know? I just started to feel something happening. I didn't know exactly what it was, you know? All of a sudden, I began to realize that I had a lot of music to make, you know? That's personally what happened to me, and I just started making music, and I couldn't stop.
Right.
But I didn't try to stop, you know? Because I was having a lot of fun doing it, and it was just a ball, you know? And another thing, I started to feel really conscious of the power of love, you know? And so many things started happening at one time, I blew my mind.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Completely blew it. And ever since I blew my mind, everything has just been so groovy.
Right.
You know? That's what happened to me.
And that's one of the things that it's hard to explain to people who aren't into this, that the religious thing is a groove.
Yeah.
You know, you can for once refer to religion as fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, in whatever that word means.
Yeah.
You know, that it's something that's individual, and it's like an exercise of yourself, so it's fun, it's an expression.
You know, if we have to use religion, I wish that we'd replace it at least by the word meditation for a while.
Right, I agree.
Because I think that word covers it. I mean, if you know, everybody does drop the word religion, why don't they just say meditation? Because that's really what it is.
Yeah, and that way we don't confuse it with what was happening before.
Because now everybody has such a direct experience with God, and I think that, of course, everybody turns on to it now through meditation. Most people do now.
Right.
And we've been meditating and doing this Maharishi thing, and it's just been beautiful. It's been so beautiful that I can't even tell you. If I could tell you, I would.
Right.
You know? And the Beatles have certainly inspired a lot of people, have pushed a lot of people in the direction of Maharishi. And I think that's pretty out of sight myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, in England, it's just everywhere. That's the one thing. Like,
has it really just gotten all over England?
Everywhere.
Meditation?
Right. You walk into people's houses, and you know, and like the difference between now and a year ago, talking to pop people.
Yeah.
You know, there was always an openness and I think a truthfulness that never existed, like in the showbiz thing, which I've never understood. But on the other hand, now it's really just pure love. I mean, there's just this. Nothing to hide, sort of, you know, take my hand, sit down, you know, and it's, this whole, you know, 6 months of working on this thing has really been a revelation.
Has it?
You know, I've met the most beautiful people, you know, in the whole world, I think, you know. And, like Donovan was saying to me, you know, if you could just collect all the people you've talked to and put them in one big building in Geneva, God, it would be a pretty great world.
It would be a powerful meditation vibration.
Yeah, right. And
but we've, my brother Carl, who's driving, is the one who went to Paris, you know, in this car anyway. Well, Annie was in Paris with Carl.
Was this for the UNICEF thing?
This is for UNICEF, and Maharishi happened to have been in the front row with 2 of the Beatles, John and George. And I guess that's where Maharishi had a notion to, you know, initiate the guys, you know, the guys that were there. And so, you talked to him before?
He invited us over to the hotel that day because we talked to him during dress rehearsal. And he said, come on over to the hotel.
So they went over to the hotel, and at that time Maharishi initiated the guys. And when they came back, they were all just floating. Well, he was. I don't know about the other guys. Carl's a very sensitive guy. And it's just got to him, I guess, you know, like it should, and like Maharishi wanted it to.
Right.
And it certainly did, and it got to me through him. And I'd already been initiated a year before, and for some ridiculous reason I hadn't followed through with it. And when you don't follow through with something, you can get all clogged up.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's just what happened, and we didn't follow through with meditation when we did get initiated way over a year ago. And all of a sudden, we're all meditating together now, and it just seemed to all be right on time. Oh, wow. We all just got with it.
I even hear you're thinking in terms of music, you know, based on meditation, or for meditation, or what have you.
I'd like to try to write a song that reminds me of meditation, that, you know, of the feeling I get when I just go right through it, you know, do it. And I've got some ideas, and I got some feelings about it. And I don't think it'll be very long now before I come up with a song about meditation, you know, and it shouldn't be more than a month. anyway, the most. You know.
You have a lot of material, rejected material or material that is sort of shelved going, since we sort of went into music here, that you haven't released, and which I understand, like now you're talking about your next album is going to be backing tracks, right? Which you decided that because you like them and for various reasons you thought you'd do an album of them. You might get into the R&B thing, like tonight some of the guys were playing some stuff and talking to you about some stuff that had the R&B thing going.
We've we've touched upon quite a few different bags, and with us, it's just been a real experience, just bouncing around all the bags,
Right.
We just found a little way to just bounce around the bags, and it's just been so much fun.
Yeah.
Like we just did an R&B album, and we really haven't planned our next, production album. Of course, did you say track album?
Track album.
Background track?
Right, isn't it?
It's going to be called Stack of Tracks.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And we took a picture of a big stack of tapes that went all the way to a ceiling. At the very top, the thing would have fallen over if we not stuck in a 4-track at the very top.
Right,
and just to keep the thing from falling. Took a picture of it with us standing around the stack. So I think it's going to be out of sight. I don't know if it'll sell very much, but it'll be a real nice, solid catalog member.
Well, not only that, but I mean, like Mike was saying, Mike Love was saying that it may have not have been your original idea, but it occurred to me that this kind of thing. Look, I mean, you have an audience full of kids that are playing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That are really into the music now. They're not really there to scream and yell, but they really, like in San Francisco, they sit and listen by the hundreds.
Yeah, it's a nice, just pure music.
Right.
No words, nothing. It's just the first time we've ever put out pure music.
A non-vocal thing,
non-vocal,
right? Yeah, which is
music.
really wild for the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
You did something else which really sort of surprised me. In your Wild Honey tracks, not all of them, but a lot of them, for a group that had always been known for this precise, wild vocal thing, you dropped the level of your voices back into the other tracks, and that really, I think that was, I don't know the word for it. It was, first of all, it was unexpected.
Yeah.
I liked it very much. I know some people have commented the contrary, but I think it shows where you're at.
Yeah.
In the way that it's indicating that, okay, a vocal group can get into the music. Can really start swinging with the idea of this is a whole thing, not just like you came from the Platters and what have you, and the groups that, I assume the Platters and groups that you digged from the past, but they were, in a different format. And you're sort of...
We've, our original forte was vocal.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
And from there, I began to learn the art of production and the art of making background music, which it became kind of suddenly around 64. All of a sudden I found myself in the studio taking hours and hours just going through, track experiences, then all of a sudden the two came together, the vocal and the track, and then all of a sudden I began to realize that it was all just one art. It was all one thing, and I didn't separate voices and instruments anymore, and I no longer thought of, track and vocal. It was just one thing,
Right.
And now, God, it's come so far, I don't really know what to say about it, I just don't know where it's come to with me, musically. In fact, I've run out of a lot of ideas, believe it or not.
Well,
in the conventional sense.
Yeah, in the conventional sense, yeah. But, I mean, don't you think we're at a point now where everybody's running out of ideas? Out of ideas. That's why new things have to happen and are happening.
They've got to.
Yeah, because otherwise we're back in the Rosemary Clooney scene where we're doing, another ballad, that sounded like... Here's another thing I wanted to ask you about. I was surprised to find out from other guys, other members of the Beach Boys, that you felt like Smiley was easy. That as I understand it, it was going to be sort of a big production thing, and then about midway through, you decided, no, why should because the album production thing is in, why do one? And you pulled back, and made it simpler. But I think it's one of the most complicated. Albums in the pop field, like things like the wind chime thing. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, wind chimes.
Yeah, well, that's...
We pulled out of that production pace merely because I was about ready to die.
Right.
I was trying so hard, and so all of a sudden, I just decided not to try anymore, and not try to do such great things, such big musical things.
Right.
All of a sudden, and we had so much fun. The Smiley Smile era was so great. It was unbelievable. Personally, spiritually, everything.
Right.
It was great. I didn't have any paranoid feelings. you know.
Well, vegetables proves that.
Yeah, no paranoia. And there are people in the industry that I've come in contact with, which I've really felt a big, strong jolt from, you know, and quite amazing and quite powerful. And then it's really been quite humbling.
Yeah.
To come across certain individuals and talents. It's been quite amazing.
How do your contact with the Beach Boys, with the Beatles? I understand they come up with an idea for a possible television thing and so on, and that there was a very warm contact between you and them. Is that correct, or am I?
Yeah, there was a very warm contact with the guys when they were just there about a month ago.
Right. Yeah, that was the UNICEF
Paul
thing.
McCartney was out here last summer.
Right.
It was rather it was a little uptight. And we really didn't seem to hit it off. It didn't really flow like it. I guess it wasn't supposed to flow.
Right.
So it really didn't go too good, you know. So.
Well, I found the same thing though.
It didn't work.
Right, but like I've never been able to get more than 3 words out of them when they've been on tour. Yeah. But when I went into their homes and talked to them, not only did we talk a lot, but then we started just having dinner together. You know, it was one of those things. And I think you understand. I think on tour, or in America, I don't know what it is. Like, when I met the Beach Boys, as a matter of fact, in St. John's in New York, I had a very different impression of them from the impression I got today and tonight, because they seemed very relaxed. And they were just before a performance. And I guess all of us get uptight like that, so it's probably the bad times.
Yeah. Maybe the bad planets, who knows?
Yeah, right, who knows, you know, because that's the miracle, you know. The great thing is you get a second chance and really get to like somebody, you know.
Yeah, you get a third chance after the second chance.
That's right, it keeps going.
It's even greater.
Right.
But there's been so many thoughts about, you know, in our group, you know, internally. So in our secret meetings that we have, we try not to have too many people around when we meet.
Right.
Because we try to keep it all just in the group when we discuss things. And but we've ran across some thoughts where we'd like to just pull out of conventional sound making and try to get into making sounds that have never been made before, ever.
Right.
And we've been doing a lot of thinking about this for a long time, and I think it was sort of a forethought or some kind of maybe a psychic impression of what we would be making maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now.
Right.
But it's been strong with me. Yeah, anything.
Yeah, right.
And but I've been hearing these sounds, and I think it's going to really sound beautiful pretty soon.
Right. You know, the Beatles talk a lot about Stockhausen, and I talked to Stockhausen, you know, and he made the point to me, because he's a very groovy guy, I think, and he made the point that he thinks that music has come to the point that there's no separation between pop and so-called concert music, that it really, it's all sort of in the same place, it's all doing the same thing. The Beatles obviously have been very intrigued by this whole electronic thing.
Yeah, they've really expanded, they've really incorporated the electronic thing so beautifully and gracefully, and I think that everybody has great respect for the way they've been able to gracefully go into the electronic bag beautifully.
Right.
And no telling what they're going to do. You know, I think it sounds to me like they have access to recording devices never before used, because I hear sounds in some of the things they're doing that I can't possibly imagine where it came from. I mean, not what instrument, what machine, or what, you know.
It's a synthesizer that they're using.
Wherever, whatever.
Right. Yeah, but the same thing that Stockhausen uses and so on,
So very much of its own thing, you know.
Yeah. There are 2 big changes that I think have affected the music of the Beatles and the Beach Boys. I was wondering how you felt about it. I think that when the Beatles decided not to perform any longer, and no longer had to face the hassle of making a cut sound on stage like it does on an album, and therefore could say, now we want to go into the program. The album is a program, and in America the album is now a big thing, so you can do it. That, I think, brought about a lot of changes in them. I also have the feeling that in the same way, when you decided not to perform with the guys and to stay home in the studio.
A revitalization of Total Life Energy was what happened to me. I was able to express myself in such complete terms. You know, I could take all the time I wanted. I had no chains. I didn't feel like I was being pressed to make something in an unnatural way, you know, and all of a sudden, I couldn't believe how much greater, you know, making music was when I did have the time.
Right.
And the naturalness to do it, you know?
Right.
It was so beautiful.
Is it possible that feeling of freedom is what has slowly made you reevaluate the vocal thing in comparison to the musical thing.
I'm sure it has. I'm sure it's played a great, part in that.
Because you've gotten really into a kind of, the word isn't a good one, but a kind of, they talk about you as a genius of orchestration, and that's probably an embarrassing label.
Well, as far as orchestration goes, I think Nelson Riddle's a genius.
Yeah.
But I think that...
Good one, but a kind of... they talk about you as a genius of orchestration, and that's probably an embarrassing label.
Well, as far as orchestration goes, I think Nelson Riddle's a genius.
Yeah.
But I think that where I've been able to display some of, musically, some of my inner feelings has been through, being able to blend different sounds together and be able to use the human voice more or less as an instrument and combine it with instruments so that I guess you could say it's all alive, really, voice, instrument, they're all really the same thing, and I think that's where I've had my biggest thrill. It's being able to just get the voices to groove with everything else and really make it feel like it's just there with it, and part of it, and the same thing. And I guess I went through the peak of my orchestrating years about Pet Sounds.
Right.
That's, I think, where it really hit its peak.
Yeah, that was really exciting.
Yeah, it was really quite an album to make, and it was it really dumped it all out there,
Yeah.
And it was something that I can listen to. Now, I listened to it a couple nights ago with my wife, in bed, and I felt like I'd just heard it for the first time. It's one of the albums I've made where it's really stayed right with me, new all the time.
Right.
It's beautiful. I really enjoy listening to it.
Oh, that's great. That must be a very good feeling.
Yeah, and there's also some air needed here.
Yeah. What about a comparison to other vocal groups? A lot of this is the comparison isn't better and worse. It just occurred to me that there's a contrast. The Mamas and the Papas are into a kind of vocal sound. And
they've had. I think the Mamas and Papas have projected their vocals with not quite as much emphasis on a track, and I think their vocal. You could say that you can turn the Beach Boys upside down, just the record or the track or whatever, and I think they have as much vocal as we do track.
Yeah.
Kind of look at it that way. Whereas I think that we emphasize a little more track than vocal. And I think that's, I guess, in that proportion, there's a lot of ways to look at it. But they really did. Their vocal thing stuck way out, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think they did it beautifully. And
they don't want
very beautiful alone.
Right. John doesn't want to change, though. One of the things.
Why is that?
I don't know. I went into this for a long time with him, and I was saying, why do you want to? He said, well, don't forget, we're singers, we're not musicians.
Yeah.
He said, probably Brian sitting, with music feels, like he said, that he's said it all and now has to move on, and therefore change is natural. We feel that, he said, and I'm quoting Phillips, that the sound we've created is sort of, for us, a kind of ultimate vocal thing, and that's as far as we can think,
Yeah.
I guess that's what it is. I mean, I don't know. He'd know if anybody would. Huh. But it surprises me that they don't.
That comes as a little bit of a shock.
Yeah.
I've never actually heard any thing from Phillips about his music.
Yeah.
His music and what things. But that's strange, huh? He's not going to change.
He doesn't want to. At least, like next week.
He will.
But,
I bet he does.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
One time I said no. I couldn't think and dream of getting out of this bag. I dug it too much, and then all of a sudden one day I just decided to crack it open and just go in every place I could go, just fill it up everywhere, and things are getting pretty filled up,
right. Yeah, but like you have that new machine in your studio, and this is the other thing. Why don't we get into that for a couple of minutes?
This machine, are you talking about the oscillator?
Yeah. No, I'm talking about, what is it called? The thing that has a potential of, it has all kinds of tape heads and tapes.
Oh, that. Is that a Chamberlain?
Yeah, Chamberlain. That's what it's called, I think.
Or a Mellotron. Chamberlain.
Chamberlain
is probably what it is. We have one. We haven't experimented with it yet.
But it's a wild thing in terms of the possibilities.
Yeah, it sure is. If they could devise, and I suppose a lot of people have, ways to press the key and have instant reaction from the tape, and also have clarity in the tape.
Yeah,
to put your course, take the Chamberlain in concept, and have a guy slap all the tapes on himself, and have your own man do it, and perfect the sound on the Chamberlain. God, it's limitless.
Yeah, it's endless.
I think it is.
And the synthesizer is another limitless thing, because even though it doesn't imitate orchestral sound, well, that's the sort of thing. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do something which, you know, you can do it. When I get back to New York, you'll get a little parcel, and it's going to have a couple of Stockhausen things in it, because he asked me to send them to you when I saw him in Cologne. So there, and then you'll know what it is. It's a electronic instrument that creates sound, just pure sound, you know, in any timbre, any range. And
it comes down to combinations. It comes down to a creative mind to put these things to work.
Yeah, well, he's supposed to be the genius in the field classic.
Who has heard this?
Well, I have.
And Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles have heard it. They're very hung on him. You know, they really, it being in England, Europe, where Stockhausen's very big. Here he's not. But being in that general thing, he's made such a big impact. Like Shankar has here and there, Stockhausen has there. Well, it's sort of blow your mind music to begin with. And he's doing crazy things, like using this electronic, pure sound. I mean, it doesn't remind you of violin, anything. It's just pure sound. And then combining it in performance by doing a score not based on bars or time signatures, but based on 1/10 of a second cues, and combining 5 and 6 instruments which play in concordance with the pre-existing electronic sound. And it's really insane, you know, it's just incredible. And he has 6 speakers around you when you're listening, so that the sound, the musicians come from here, and then some sound may come from there, and then over there.
Is it enough to take you away?
Oh, it takes you away. It takes you away.
Yeah, that really does sound interesting.
Right, it's great.